Hey folks, preseason is rolling right along with some big roster moves that are going to be happening any moment now as the regular season approaches. We're going to break it all down for you right here on the OZone. You're in the offensive zone, your place for Leafs hockey. Hey folks, welcome to the OZone. That's Coach, that's Katie, and I'm the Debo. We're here to talk all things Leafs. Listen, remember folks, hit subscribe, ring the bell. You'll never miss any content. Also, like the video, share the video. It helps broaden the audience, and then also leave a comment. This matters most. We listen. We love to hear what you have to say. Drives the content, makes us better. Okay, lots of things happening, but first, hey, before we get into it, I just want to say congratulations. This touches pretty close to KD right here as well. Big congratulations to Team Canada and Regan Devine from the DeSantis School of Karate, taking home some medals over there in Italy. Congratulations, KD. You must be very proud.
Good stuff.
Proud Papa. Proud Papa.
Okay. Listen, lots of things going on. Lots of potential roster alignments. Geez, if you open up anything on the internet, you're going to have 1,000 different ways to slice and dice this lineup. Coach, how is this team going to look to start the season? Who makes the team? How does the forward lineup look?
Yeah, so forwards, maybe not my area of expertise like KD. Oh, by the way, KD, congrats. I was talking last pod about that guy Yabber, that big, huge guy being, making me feel safe. I think with a karate champion in your house, you feel pretty safe too, I bet.
Yeah. Certainly I have a security detail. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
That's good. So anyway, I looked at it two ways. And I think we'll put this up. Our sponsorship money from Carbuzzi is being put to good use. Look at these graphics, huh? Pretty sweet. So I think this is how we open up opening night. Not touching the first line. First line is as is. I've got Yarncroc on that second line and Kerfoot sitting in for Nylander. I'll talk about that in just a sec. I'm signing Aston Reese. I think he's earned it. He's on that third line with Kampf and Abe Kubel. We get all the hyphens on one line. And then I think Nick Robertson makes the team. And I actually think Dennis Mulligan makes the team out of camp. And I'm glad to see Engvall back. So you may say, well, hold on. Nick Robertson, he's done enough to make the team. He's got to play with good players. He can't play on the fourth line. I get that thinking, but let me give you an example of another way that guys could break into the league. There's a guy here in Dallas. On the Dallas roster, he's going into his third year. His first year, he came up with all kinds of promise, started on the fourth line. And he made his way up. He really only got first-line minutes about halfway through last year. Not sure who you might think that is. It's his brother, Jason Robertson. That guy's holding out right now, but he's going to make big money. So just because you're a good player, I don't mind if you earn it. I like to see him on the roster, but I don't know what he's about defensively. And, Kev, we've talked all year about the deficiencies of that line defensively. Now, granted, Tavares isn't there. But I know Yarncroc is responsible, and the coaches like him. That's why I have him there. I think so. We do have a couple of injuries, most notably Tavares. When we get to everybody's in and we're best, I have it looking more like this. So I got Tavares still at center. We could argue maybe he should move to the wing. I left Yarncroc there as well. I think he's going to get off to a good start, so I think they'll want to keep him there. You'll notice that I have Robertson still on the roster. Now, this doesn't add up from a cap perspective. It's hard to explain that without looking at the D and the goalies as well. But if we sign Aston Reese, we get Liljegren back, so now we got to account for Sandin's money. We're 2 point something over, probably close to $3 million over. So the reality is this best lineup, when everybody's healthy, probably doesn't have Kerfoot. And so maybe a guy like Gaudette slides into that fourth line center because we can't afford everybody, right? Something's going to happen. Or somebody's always hurt. and then we're okay, and maybe it looks something like this. But anyway, this is my shot at it.
KD, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, we've talked about it at length in the summer. I think the second line is going to be tricky. It's one of those things where, with the top six, you do need a certain level of skill and finding those pairs, trying to get that second line right. I know the second line was productive. And I know everyone loves to talk about Nylander and how much he was scoring, and Tavares is still a point a game player, but they just got caved in their own zone a lot. I mean, hard to believe that Nylander could be minus 19, scoring 80 points on one of the best teams in the league. So
unbelievable.
we've got to figure something out there. But what's interesting is, I mean, I thought Dubas hit. He hit 3 out of the 4 last year, right? Bunting and was
Kasha.
great. Still
Kasha and Camp.
Kasha was good, who we lost, and Camp was great. Obviously, Richie didn't work out, but if we're going to go 3 of 4, that's okay. We'll see if we can do the same. I'd be happy with 2 of 4. So, whether it's one of the hyphens who sort themselves out, the Kube, I guess he's. I get confused which one's who, but and then we get Jarnkrok, I think, who looks to be the guy who, if anything, can take over from Kerfoot if we need to move him. He did legitimately play a lot of center the last 2 years, and was solid. He's actually not bad on the draws too. He can move, and we have to go through the files, but he probably has spent some time with some of the other Swedes. In international and playing for the Swedish team. I think that's what you do. I think there'll be, a younger youth movement on 3 and 4. And I think that is good. One thing I will say, though, is that Keefe wants that Camp third line, checking line. They're going to be used a lot in their own end. So I think the people who are going to be defensive minded are going to end up being gravitated and stuck on that.
That's the reason I moved Engvall up to that line when everybody's healthy, because he can really move and he can play defensively. Yeah, I agree with you. Look, the fourth line's not going to move the needle. We're getting 100 points. We're making the playoffs, probably, right?
Yeah.
But so you'd like to go with younger guys and see what you've got, because you have the luxury of doing it, right?
Yeah. No, I think you're right, and so just a few comments that I know. I think 100% as soon as we get that. As soon as Tavares gets back, you see Engvall on that third line with Camp. It just worked so well last year. You win the draw, puck goes around, he gets the puck on the half boards, skates it to the blue line, dumps it in, Matthews over the board. They did it 100,000 times last year. It worked every time. I love that. I'm interested to see how Jarnkrok works out. I mean, I really don't know much about him. By all accounts, he seems, as you called him, Kev, a bit of a jackknife. Maybe he's your ultimate Alexander Kerfoot, who always, in my opinion, you've heard me say it on the pod many times, a guy who can do a lot of stuff, but he always does it kind of second best. And that's a tough guy to sort of force into your top 6. I like the idea of getting Robertson some playing time. And if things work out, he may be able to move up. You may be able to say, listen, if the second line is going to be all offense like it was last year, then maybe you put another guy up there. He can snipe. There's no question about that. We've seen him top of the circle snipe a couple goals in the preseason. It's preseason, but if you can snipe in the NHL, you can do it, right? So
he had that audition last year, 8-9 games, something like that. Played on Tavares' line. He had 1 assist. Right. He's got to know he's running out of chances. He's got to know he's got to produce here, and I think he will. I'm with you, Mike.
Yeah, another thing that I just want to bring up maybe before we move on is not a lot of talk about this. I think it's because everyone knows the first line's probably going to stay intact. But apparently Marner's 20 pounds heavier. He worked out and buffed up this year. And there's a couple other guys that are in camp that are like that as well. That just like they packed on muscle. Nick Robertson is one of those guys, and Sandin is apparently a lot bigger too. So those guys, I don't know what they were eating, but they got big and they got strong. So we'll see what that translates into.
Hopefully they didn't go on Fred Anderson's diet at the beginning of his career.
Okay, That's the forwards. Let's move on, Coach. Let's talk about D. How are we going to start this lineup out? And let's go from there. What do you got?
Yeah, this is way simpler, right? I mean, we have 6 healthy NHLD right now going in. Now that Muzzin's back, good to see him back. Right. Mm-hmm. So I got Riley and Brody together, Giordano and Hall, which is was our third pair in the playoffs last year, and I got Muzzin and Sandin. I don't care if they're 2 or 3. You can move those guys back and forth. Doesn't matter. Yep. Sandin's been practicing on the right. I think he'll start the season on the right. What gets more interesting is what we look like when Liljegren comes back. So we know that when Liljegren comes back, when Tavares comes back, we got to move some salary out. Hall is a guy that's been talked about. I think Hall stays and plays. And I think it's Riley Brody. I think it's Giordano and Hall. And I think Liljegren slots in with Muzzin. Or you could talk me into Hall with Muzzin and Liljegren with Giordano. Doesn't really matter. Sandin's the 7th guy. We talked about it for months. He's the 4th best lefty. Having said that, he's going to play 60 games because those guys are going to be banged up. They're going to be getting him in. He can spell in for Liljegren, spell in for Hall. 100%. I bet you those 3 guys are on a rotation. But he's still outside looking in when everybody's healthy.
I don't disagree with that. KD, what do you think?
I think it's right. I mean, if we can get Sandin to be able to go on both sides, but both right and left, that would be an ideal situation. Then we theoretically have 2 guys who can play on both sides, and I would love to see them keep all 7. I totally would. As Coach said, guys are going to get hurt. Guys are it's a tough league, and those are 7 legitimate defensemen. Now. Yeah. At the end of last year, you would say if you rated them all, that Hull rated higher than both Liljegren and Sandin. In a perfect world, they both leapfrog him because theoretically their ceilings are higher than his. Yeah. So in a perfect world, we get those guys play themselves higher in the rating or in the ranking, and it's good for the team. So at the same time, if I'm looking at Hall or Liljegren or Sandin as the 7th outside looking in, I like my decor. I definitely do.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. And I guess you've got Ben lurking somewhere beneath that, and he can kind of play both sides a little bit if you run into a rash of injuries. I know Coach doesn't like the sound of that. Listen, there's a lot of people right now.
Though, hey, Devo, one thing.
Yep.
I'd rather have Ben than Victor Mete. One thing, preseason doesn't teach you much. I think what it taught us was he's not an NHL defenseman.
Well, I kind
of knew that, but
I was just going to say that, Coach. Yeah. So you look at this lineup here. I'll splash it up here again, and a lot of people are going, "Wait, Justin Hall? Like, if you got cap problems, move this bum out." I know there's people watching this video who are saying that. If you look at these 6 guys here, he is one of 2 guys that play the right side. One of 2. Also, look at the guys that are currently on that right-hand side. You got Brody, you got Liljegren. What are you going to do when you're killing penalties? And what are you going to do with net front presence? Speaking of Mete, did anyone watch in horror at our new fragile made of glass goaltender get run over in the preseason as Mete was basically just thrown onto the goalie at every whistle, every single whistle? You can't have that. If there's any chance that this experiment in net is going to work with these guys, you can't have people jamming them from day one. It's a long season. You need some net presence guys. Hull and Muzzin are the only 2 guys they got who can do that. The only 2 guys. So I hate to break it to you, folks. You're stuck with them. And unless they do something to bring someone else in, you're stuck with them. Period.
Yeah. Well, and listen, like Hall has played lots of big minutes, important minutes, and against top lines. So, I think the Swedes have been sheltered a little bit to this point. Hell, Liljegren only played 74 games as an NHLer, and Sandin's only played 88. So they're still wet behind the ears. Like, we need Hall in this lineup just to get those guys ready. Again, in a perfect world, they relieve him, but I don't know if we're there yet. I mean, we certainly weren't going into playoffs last year, so I think we're going to need some more games.
I think you need him. You need him more than you need the Swiss Army knife of Kerfoot up front.
Absolutely.
right? There's
Right.
enough guys sort of like Kerfoot. Yeah, we're going to be a little less talented up front when you move that 3.5. But you can afford to do that up front. It's tough. You need 7 good D. Somebody's going to be hurt.
Yeah.
So we're looking. Is there any other way? What happens if you start waving guys and they clear? Obviously on the forwards list, Wayne Simmons was left off. Clifford was left off. It breaks my heart. I fully agree with you. You guys know where I stand with respect to Simmons. He's one of my favorite all-around hockey players, not just Leaf. But I kind of agree with you. I mean, maybe there's an opportunity that you can start accruing nickels by making some sort of tough moves and maybe waiving some of these guys. And then maybe you can, instead of moving out of Kerfoot, you could maybe not sign Aston Reese and get there. But I also kind of like what Aston Reese brings. He's going to bring you, a heck of a lot of hits every night. And he makes, if you're going to be putting a lot of young guys out there, like a Robertson, he makes those guys look a little taller on the ice because he's out there. That's my take anyways. Mm-hmm. All right. Coach, you got the hat on, but I just want to say, listen, this Friday, obviously, for you Toronto Blue Jays fans, and I assume a lot of you out there are, we start the postseason. First time in a couple of years. KD, what are your thoughts on the upcoming season?
Well,
or postseason.
Postseason, yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's going to be tight. I certainly like it better than the one and done. We got 2 out of 3. All 3 games are in Toronto, which is huge. And I mean, it's a pretty good team that's playing pretty good at the moment. We still haven't seen Vladdy all year get really hot, but we've certainly seen some of the other guys. And I like our starter first game. We got to win that first game, and I think we win that. And there we go. Bring on Houston.
Okay, Coach, what do you think? You have a history in this great American pastime. Do you care to share?
Yeah, I do. I haven't watched a lot of Blue Jays, so I think a fair percentage it's a Leaf podcast. May also be Blue Jays fans. We've got a bunch of Americans listening in too. But I could I'm a Blue Jays fan. I didn't watch them all that much this year, but them going into the playoffs reminded me of this picture. This is not a piano. This is a picture we took. I don't know, 94, 95, somewhere in that time frame. So if I go right to left, that's my brother. Mitch Marner's dad may recognize him from weekly stops there during the contract negotiations. Beside him is Cito Gaston, 2-time World Series champion manager. There's the not as old coach in the middle. George Bell, 1987 American League MVP right there. Big guy, man.
Beauty.
Bob McCaskill, it's my brother's buddy from Walkerton. What a beauty that guy is. And I would challenge even the most ardent Blue Jays fan to know who's on the left. So who's on the left is this guy. This guy is Lou Thornton, or as he was known, Sweet Lou Thornton. And you see on his baseball reference page, he's outfielder and pinch runner. He was pretty much just a pinch runner on the Blue Jays, right? In his career, 89 at-bats, 1 home run. So the story, it's a charity golf. It's Tony Fernandez's charity golf tournament. And we played, and each group gets a Blue Jay. We got Lou Thornton. And we're like, just like you, just like all of you. Who's this guy? And so anyway, we're driving around with them, a couple of drinks. And he's like, I don't drink much. I'm like, okay, we'll see how it goes today. By the end, he's burning the card all over. He's hammered. Tony's like, calm down, man. So anyway, World Series champs, or at least Cito was, and Tony came back in '93 and won.
Yeah.
So look, I hope this picture and that story brings us some mojo. I'd love to see. We're Toronto fans. We are starved for playoff success outside of that Raptors run.
Yeah, absolutely true. Good luck, Blue Jays. There you have it. We're getting close, folks. The countdown to real games is on. We're counting it down with you right here on the OZone.